Welcome to the McAllister Scouting Report. This version's called Coach's Corner, and I'm John McAllister. My guest today is an assistant athletic director at Ohio State in charge of football player personnel. Mark Pantoni, I've known for 8 years. He came to Ohio State from Florida when Urban Meyer made the move to Ohio State. Mark is very knowledgeable in the football recruiting business, and he spends today talking about different parts of the recruiting process, and mostly about parents and coaches and the players and how they can handle the recruiting process. I'm really excited. It's informative. Sit back and enjoy the podcast and watch Mark Pantoni. I'm so fortunate. Mark Pantoni, Ohio State, Assistant Athletics Director, Player Personnel. Okay. Well, what player personnel? I did some homework, and you tell me if I've missed something here, okay? Because I give you a lot of credit. You're a supervisor of film evaluation, on campus official and unofficial visits, social media and creative team, travel and roster management. You supervise those. What else do you do? That doesn't keep you busy, does it?
I think that covers pretty much my whole day with that stuff alone.
My goodness.
Well, you didn't mention dealing with 11 coaches as well.
Oh my!
That might be the hardest part of the job right there.
That might be the hardest part of the job right there, right. I think. And then you've got Hinton and some of those guys. That's probably adds to it.
Yeah, Hinton's worth like 3 alone.
Sounds good. Okay, I did some other. I'm going to embarrass you, but I know you've done this since you came to Ohio State with Coach Meyer, and then you did it in Florida. Now, you graduated summa cum laude in. You got your master's and undergraduate in physiology and kinesiology. Okay, then I would say right away, what in the world are you doing this stuff for? You know, I'm joking with you. But how did you get started, Mark, in the whole recruiting business? Briefly.
Yeah. So like you said, I did my undergraduate in exercise physiology and kinesiology, and my goal was to go to medical school. And as I finished my undergraduate courses and I took the MCAT and I was applying to schools, I kind of was a little hesitant on going to a school for another 12 years. I was pretty burnt out, being in debt. And so I said, you know what, there's a 1-year master's program in exercise physiology at Florida. Let me do this and just kind of see where my career is going to go. And at that time, I was working with the track team at Florida, just helping the coaches with just office duties and a little bit in recruiting. And I always had a passion for football and, working with the team and just the general manager aspect of it. So it always fascinated me in building a roster. And so at that time, I used the track coach as a recommender in the football program. I happened to know another student in there volunteering at the time. And so between the two of them, I was able to get my foot in the door in football just as a volunteer in recruiting. And at that time, the main process to recruit was handwritten letters and sending mail, snail mail.
Right.
So, when I first started, I was coming in. I tried to be the first one in every morning by like 6:30 in the morning. And I'd come in and my first job was to handwrite 500 envelopes every day. And I guess if that doesn't scare you away, I don't know what would. But, it started from there.
All right. I think that is so neat. I think, number one, I heard you say volunteer, which is neat to start with. I think 500 handwritten and I think you have to pay your dues. And I heard Coach Meyer say once that he just saw you kind of hanging around and then he hired you because you were good. But then you got into you stepped up. Did you do, before you came to Ohio State, did you do recruiting quite a bit in Florida then? I mean, yes. In the program at Florida?
Yeah, so I was strictly all recruiting. And at that time, recruiting offices didn't really exist. There was one person in charge, really two people at Florida who were involved in recruiting. So when I first started there, his name was Bob Lasavita, who was at Florida State for a long time, who recently retired. But he was there for my first year, so that's who I kind of leaned on, and he gave me different roles. And as I continued to, show my face and never leave the office, the coaches eventually learned who I was and would ask me to give tours since I was a student there and I knew the campus well. And after a while, a lot of parents and kids just had kept saying to the coaches I had done a good job and was very thorough with them. And they just kept putting more and more on my plate. And after a year, Bob had left to go to Florida State. And so that gave me a lot more responsibilities. And it was a great time just to kind of teach myself and learn, not really knowing what I was doing, just kind of, training myself in a lot of ways.
But I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm older, but I did a lot of the same stuff. And you just have to keep knocking on the doors. And like you, if you're good at it, they're going to reward you somehow. If you work hard, they're going to reward you. And that's kind of how I did it in my business. Okay, let's talk about, that's really good. Let's talk about the recruiting process, Mark, from where it starts. Now, I realize, and we're not so naive, Ohio State is a little bit different than mid-major recruiting-wise, but you still have to work at it. And you still have to, in fact, I'm not so hard sometimes. I think sometimes it's harder at that level, your level, than that level, the lower, because you can't afford to make mistakes. I mean, we do, or you guys, everybody does, but you can't afford to. So, but tell me, how would a parent get involved? Okay, I have a son that's a sophomore. How would a parent, should he or she do anything?
Yes. So in my opinion, we really start just doing our initial very beginning evaluations at the end of their sophomore year.
Okay.
As you know, the development between their sophomore and junior year is pretty daunting, just physically with their bodies going from 15, 16-year-olds to 17. And so that's when we first usually get our eyes on the film, is as a sophomore. And it's good to start going to camps and kind of getting that initial understanding of what it takes. But really that junior film is really what makes or breaks you, as far as eliminating the big portion of the pool to kind of get our focus. And then really after their junior year, they get their highlights put together, send that off. And then really, again, that junior year coming to camps is critical, because then the coaches really get an understanding of what you are going into your senior year.
Right.
And unfortunately, the way recruiting sped up these days, a lot of us get, halfway to 3/4 full going into the senior year of their season. So those spots are limited. So the film you put out there as a senior is also pretty crucial to be able to get one of those last spots.
Yeah. And I think the other thing you mentioned, highlight films, they should be good, but you guys also through Huddle, I'm pretty sure you probably use Huddle, you see every game film, and you have enough people working with and under you, or whatever the word would be. You see a lot of game films, look at game films. So sometimes the kids, the highlight films are okay, and they're good because they wet you, get you a little, wet your appetite a little bit. But then it's like that. The junior year is so important, I think. Let's branch off into camps. Tell me about, what do you do at camps, Mark? What do you do, you specifically?
I'm there more so just overseeing the process and just making sure everything's running smoothly. I'm there with Coach Day just to give him any feedback, make sure he knows who's where.
Right.
And then I'm just trying to get my eyes on certain guys so I myself can form that opinion based on what I'm seeing. And
camp is huge, isn't it?
It is huge. I mean, it's almost like a job interview, in front of the coaches, and you're expected to be at your very best that day.
Well, I used to say it was like a date. Back in the spring, you initially set out those, you look at video, you kind of want to see how attractive that girl is. And then you bring her into camp and you're around her a little bit more. So you get to know her. And then after that, you kind of develop more. And hopefully there's a marriage in December and February, hopefully. That's really good. I think camps are so huge. the problem is sometimes a bad camp will hurt a kid, and it's so hard to tell them that, but they just have to bust it and everything like that. Okay, go back to the high school coach. Where does he fit in the recruiting process?
Critical. And the good thing about the state of Ohio is that high school coaches here are they're real dudes.
Right.
They're in it for the right reasons. They're helping their kids, helping the program. And so, in our opinion, we rely heavily on a high school coach's opinion. When our guys go out in the spring or in the winter and they're going through all the different high schools, we really take a lot of incentive into what the high school coaches are saying about the kids. And it's our job to know everything about them, just like when an NFL scout comes in here wanting to know everything about our guys. So they're very upfront and honest with us. And, if they think a kid is an Ohio State level player, we definitely take that into consideration.
That, and it's so important also. And I know I kind of do this in a different way than you, but you also ask personal questions. You also ask about, you coming in there and definitely you want to know things that you can't see.
Exactly.
I mean, and I think that's a high school coach has to be honest, and they are with me. And it's tough because then I may see you and say, I may see Mark Pantoni and say, Mike, you want to check this out a little bit. And you may know and you may not know. And it's something I think the kids have to be on their best behavior, or, because the coach is usually pretty honest, the high school coach.
They are, and we appreciate it. When it comes to academics or socially, they don't want to put their name on a kid who comes here and fails either. So,
and you mentioned socially, which is so important. Okay, let's go to the last guy then. What about the player? Let's talk about the player. Let's talk about, he comes initially to see you. Well, now you can see a lot of stuff on video. You can see a lot of the athleticism on camps. What do you look for, Mark, in the intangibles, or what do you look for in a player? Joey comes in, he's a junior going into his junior year, and he sees you. What talks to you? What do you look for?
First of all, their handshake. When you first meet them, is it a firm grasp or is it soft?
That sounds funny, but that's really
in the eye. But yeah, it's important. When we have spring practice starting up here in a couple of weeks, I always look and see how engaged the kids are while they're at practice. Are they up in the drills, really trying to learn and coach, or are they sitting on the bench on their phone with a hood over their head, not really paying attention?
Huge, by the way. Good.
Yeah, it's huge. And the kids don't realize we're watching this, but that's again, I said job interview before. This is another job interview for them. How they communicate with their parents. Are they respectful to their parents? Is it yes or no, sir? Or is it not really paying attention or ignoring them? Promptness is good. Just how they act during a photo shoot is important. Are they being, is it all about them, or is this, are they doing silly stuff, or are they mature? So we really look into a lot of different little things of just, their maturity levels at that age.
That's really good. And then coming out of their junior year, much the same?
Pretty similar. Yeah. Okay. More so in that time, we want to see how their body's developed. If there's really been no development, maybe they're maxed out versus the, a lineman who's gone from 250, who's now 275. And we're seeing that progressive buildup of how we want it to look. Which is
he's 6'2" lineman as a sophomore and 6'2.5" as a junior, right?
Right.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Okay, let's run to game days. And I'm, a lot of kids, a lot of players, a lot of prospects get invited to game days. I mean, let's face it, that's just what it is. You get 3 tickets or 3. But tell me, what do you expect on game days? Now everybody's pretty busy. But what do you see, Mark? What do you look for on game days?
If anything, my job is to make sure everyone's having an enjoyable experience. And kids are really coming here for the game atmosphere and to watch the game.
Right.
So we try not to put too much pressure on the recruiting side of things. Right. During those visits, we don't want to beat them up about academics on that day because it's going to go one ear out the other. Just because
it is.
Right. But if anything, again, it becomes to how engaged they are. During warm-ups, are they really, paying attention to what's going on and absorbing the crowd, or do they not seem very engaged? And How are they treating people? So little things like that.
I think, and then you made a statement earlier. This goes so fast. I still have quite. You made a statement earlier about somebody's watching you. Now I'm just a guy, but when I go to camps, that's about all I do is watch kids. And that one-on-one drill, I always tell the story. One-on-one offensive lineman versus defensive lineman, and the kid got on offense got beat pretty bad, and he was a pretty good player, prospect, big, and he got beat pretty bad. So he went to the end of the line, and I even talked to Coach Stressel. He let 3 guys skip him before he'd even come back again, and that's scary. And the little things. So coaches are always watching. You have so many helpers or volunteers or assistants, and they're all checking, and there are guys walking around that work for you that are checking guys. So it's huge. Always to be on your best behavior.
Yeah, and how do you respond to losing? Like you said, do they seem like they're a competitor, and do they look upset when they lost, or is it like, oh well, just do they go back to the end of the line, or are they fighting to get back in there? That's a great point.
I tell kids in that drill, and I don't really like that drill that much, but you learn things, obviously.
Sure.
But I tell kids, if you get beat, now whether you're tough or not, you want to jump right back in there, and whether they pull you away or whatever, but you want to jump right back in there. And so many kids don't.
Exactly.
And jump right back in there. And usually the problem with that drill is the 6'1", 240-pound guy is the one that jumps back in. But I'm joking around there. Okay, tell me about the camps we talked about, which are huge, I think. The visits are huge. And last question on the recruiting process. Should I let you find my player, or should a parent call? And that's hopefully not a very good question. Should a parent call? How should somebody reach out that hasn't been contacted?
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does. I think the strongest way to do that is if the high school coach believes in you and thinks you're this level, he's going to reach out to the area coach that he knows. Okay. And again, that would have a lot of power to where the area coaches would then come to me, say, hey, Mark, can you check this guy out? Coach so-and-so feels really strongly about him.
Okay, good. And you guys will do something following it up.
We'll definitely evaluate
Tim or Ed or somebody will okay, that's really good. Talk to me about the transfer portal. Now let's go back to something else. Let's go back. I don't want to do that yet. Okay, now I'm there. Tell me how much different is recruiting at your level as evaluating and with evaluating players? How it has to be tougher. How do you evaluate kids that you really haven't seen yet? They come to camp and you really haven't seen much. Is that the same thing? What physical qualities are you looking for? Regardless of position.
Yeah, generally speaking. So we want them to be elite competitors. So whether they're playing checkers, whether they're playing, arm wrestling, they get very upset if they don't win. They are just ultimate competitors, and more so than anything at the quarterback position, because that's your dude. That's the guy. When the game's on the line, they gotta be the man. We want them to be tough no matter what position they are, because football's a violent sport, and so that is critical for them to be tough guys. So again, it goes back to the point of camp. Of you may love a guy in camp because he's pretty running around in the shorts and the t-shirts around the cones, and then we might have to sometimes go back to the film. Why doesn't this translate?
Yeah,
on the field when
sure
the violence starts. Yeah,
that's really good. Tell me real quickly about the photo shoots. That's almost a necessary thing, isn't it? I think some people, I don't know about you guys, because I don't watch it, but I think it's almost necessary, isn't it, to compete?
Unfortunately, it is. It is. It's probably the most important thing when a kid comes on this campus now, which is
that
crazy
right?
To say. Yes.
And then how he usually asks about it, I'm sure, right?
Oh, they have it. They have it planned out, which uniform, before they even get here. So,
hi, Mr. Pantoni. When is the photo shoot?
If all we did was the photo shoot and they left, they would leave here happy.
That's really good. Tell me about the importance of junior days. I would assume you've had them coming up. What about junior days? Because sometimes it's your first date. Sometimes. Why are junior? What should kids act like on junior days?
Yeah, again, just having that professional approach,
Okay.
asking the right questions when they're meeting with their position coaches, really just getting a general understanding of what the school is and what football brings to them, what is offered.
Well, Mark, you read, I see all these silly things on Twitter and all this stuff. What would be two questions that they should ask a coach? Is that okay? Is that a fair
Yeah,
question?
I think one fair question is, have you watched my film and what do you think of it? I think
Okay.
to get feedback, I just think hearing feedback from the coaches
Okay.
is because there may be some coaches who hate to say it, but they just never have watched the film for whatever reason. So that would be one.
A lot of places.
Yeah. And then, secondly, what things can I do to,
Okay.
as it come to camp, what do you need to see from me?
That's good. Okay. I hear these questions about how many spots are open and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to ask those questions.
No.
That's so generic and so silly. I mentioned Twitter a year ago because I've done this for, as you know, 30 years and all this stuff. And a year ago, I finally got on Twitter. Okay, because I thought it was silly, a waste of time. Well, I do these podcasts now, and it's helped me. Tell me, to what extent should a prospect be on Twitter?
I think it's pretty important.
Okay.
It's their opportunity to sell themselves, market themselves. And there's a lot of kids who are really good at doing that, who are able to get a lot of offers because they present themselves or they market themselves pretty good.
That's huge, isn't it? Don't you think? Or
it
is.
I
don't know if it's really, really important, I guess. I just, in fact, I see guys and I tell kids on someplace, take a picture of your normal body. Like if it's wherever, even when they do huddle, the highlights, someplace, get a picture of your normal body. Because I've seen guys, I said, man, he's really gotten bigger and stuff. So yeah. I hope that's not silly. Okay.
We also don't want to see them tweeting all day while they're supposed to be in class, and that is also a potential red flag for us if they're on there too much. So
that's true, and obviously, you don't want any vulgarity and all these other kind of things on there.
Exactly.
Well, that jumps up. I don't see that very much. I don't see that vulgarity.
Very rare. Yeah.
And it's smart. Okay. Do you ask kids if they love football or like football? Absolutely. What's the difference between liking football? Tell me why I have to love football. If I come to you, I'm going to play at Ohio State, and I've got a scholarship, and I say, Coach, I love football. What's your thinking? If you love football, what?
Yeah. So Mick, during his every strength presentation he has, every recruit visit he has, he looks the kid and the parents in their eye and said, if you come here, it is going to be very, very hard. So you better love it. And so he tries to get his point across pretty clearly. But yes, if you don't love football and love everything that comes with being a football player, it's going to be hard to make it at a place like Ohio State.
My. Yeah, I talked to a player quite a while ago, and he was from a Division IV school, I think, went to a Power 5 school. And he said, when I got there, he said, we went from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. I know you have all these rules and stuff, but still, he said, every day. And he said, I was getting the crap beat out of me by an All-American on the other side. Right. Exactly. And that obviously happens at Ohio State. Okay. I'll finish up. I may come back sometime and bug you again.
No problem.
Because this has been so informative. And we're leaving now. Oh, I have to ask you two things. Tell me first about your faith, because I joke with you. Tell me in 2 minutes. Tell me about your faith.
Yeah, faith is extremely important to me. Just this job obviously can be very stressful. It's a lot of hours away from your family. So to me, my faith is what kind of obviously strengthens me spiritually. I'm big on worship music to kind of help get my mind right at times. And, we're blessed to have athletes in action here every day, and they're kind of feeding it down your throat in a good way of constantly just here's a verse, and it's little, but it helps. And I wouldn't be here. I don't agree with fate. I think everything happens for a reason, and I wouldn't be here where I am today without power of God.
I appreciate that. And the last thing, toddler twins. How old are those twins now?
The twins are 6.5 now, going on 13. So they're tearing up kindergarten right now.
Oh my, well, that's really good. And I know that we'll finish with this, but the average person, or maybe even higher, has no idea of the hours that you guys put in. No idea. I see, boy, that'd be a great job. Or do they? They just don't have the time. Even lower, even mid majors, shoot, it's the same thing. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate you doing this podcast with me. Okay, I think it's very informative, and I think we need to hear more of these things. Okay.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me, John. Obviously, you've done a heck of a job in the state of Ohio over more years than I've been born. So
we'll say that, man. Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.